Raised in Hong Kong, the great martial artist Bruce Lee once said, "Emotion can be the enemy." If you give in to your emotion, you lose yourself. You must be at one with your emotions because the body always follows the mind. Born on the other side of the planet in New York, singer-songwriter Mariah Carey reached pop stardom with 220 million records sold. The lyrics for Carey's hit song Emotions are, emotions come in many different colors and moods, ranging from low to high and everything in between. They are the subject matter of music, poetry, art, and philosophy.
Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for.
We share feelings with our friends, family members, and significant others. We tune into movies and TV shows to watch actors portray fictional narratives. The more emotionally compelling a film is, the better its chance of critical success. Yet the question remains, of what use are emotions? Are they an enemy of clandestine nature like Bruce Lee suggests? Or should we embrace them to reach the ethereal heavens above euphonously expressed by Carey? Let's take a look at the variegated and enigmatic world of emotions. A character for each emotion. The Pixar film Inside Out and its sequel Inside Out 2 both received critical acclaim with 91% and 98% scores on RottenTomatoes.com. The movie portrays 11-year-old Riley's emotions as personified characters.
I'm joy. This is sadness. That's anger.
What?
This is disgust. And that's fear. We're Riley's emotions.
Among others, the additional emotion of anxiety is added in the second movie.
I'm anxiety. I'm one of Riley's new emotions, and we are just super jazzed to be here. I can take notes, get coffee, manage your calendar, walk your dog, carry your things, watch you sleep.
In the film, Riley deals with her conflicting emotions through the personified characters. Each character representing a single emotion offers a perspective that often contradicts the other characters. Since all of these characters live in Riley's head, she has to deal with interpreting the cacophony of voices pulling her in different directions. This representation of single emotion characters closely resembles the internal family systems model of psychotherapy, which we will discuss in the next section. Therapists and psychologists have expressed satisfaction with how the films help people better understand their emotions. Clinical psychologist Lisa D'Amour was brought on as a consultant to help write the film. Regarding the emotion of anxiety portrayed in the movie, D'Amour said this about the writers. They actually give a masterclass. I think it will do more to help people understand anxiety's problems and its values than anything clinicians can do. On the YouTube channel Cinema Therapy, licensed therapist Jonathan Decker says that,
as a therapist, this is one of my favorite films because it teaches us to embrace sadness as a means of being close and developing compassion and empathy.
By isolating each character as a single emotion, we can start to form a type of first principles type thinking about emotions. In subtle ways, however, the film goes beyond single emotions. Decker discusses the nuances of mixed emotions.
Psychologically, I think it's so fascinating because each of these characters is meant to represent a singular emotion. And yet our emotional experience doesn't play out like that.
As is represented in the film, emotions can be thought of each having a color. For example, sadness is represented as a blue character and anger as a red one. Emotions like colors in a painting can be mixed together to form new compound feelings.
Our emotional experience is a cocktail. All of these characters are influencing each other. The fact that we see sadness smile sometimes.
Sure.
The fact that we see anger here offering encouragement.
Emotions do not stand alone, but rather influence each other in a type of feedback loop. This is a process that the internal family systems model describes as blending.
Joy is rubbed off on anger. Anger is rubbed off on joy, as evidenced by the profanity.
Exactly.
Right?
Horrifying profanity.
Jiminy, mother, loving toaster strudel.
These films help in the process of emotion recognition. According to a study entitled How Can We Use Knowledge About the Neurobiology of Emotion Recognition in Practice, emotion recognition is key to quality of life. An aptitude in emotion recognition helps to initiate and maintain healthy social relationships and to participate successfully in a range of life activities and social situations. For emotions to be useful, perhaps the first step is to be able to recognize and name them. Internal family systems. The internal family systems model of psychology is described as follows. An integrative approach to individual psychotherapy. It combines systems thinking with the view that the mind is made up of relatively discrete subpersonalities, each with its own unique viewpoint and qualities. IFS uses systems psychology to understand how these collections of subpersonalities are organized. The IFS model was invented by Richard Schwartz. Schwartz writes about the concept in several books. Here we will talk about his book, No Bad Parts, Healing Trauma and Restoring Wholeness with the Internal Family Systems Model. Subpersonalities can be thought of as the voices in our head that each represents a different viewpoint. Like the title of the book, No Bad Parts, the IFS model refers to subpersonalities as parts. According to Schwartz, it turns out that parts aren't afflictions and they aren't the ego. They're little inner beings who are trying their best to keep you safe and to keep each other safe and to keep it together in there. They have full-range personalities. Each of them have different desires, different ages, different opinions, different talents, and different resources. Similar to the movie Inside Out, each one of these parts has a different opinion on how best to serve the self. For example, when you want to eat that cookie sitting in the cookie jar, the part in your head for discipline will remind you of the consequences, whereas the subpersonality of desire will remind you how good that cookie tastes. While it might seem like a good idea to censor certain parts in our heads and abjure the Epicurean delight of a chocolate chip cookie, that desire does not simply disappear. According to the internal family systems model, that voice will gain energy, ready to backfire down the line. We often find that the harder we try to get rid of emotions and thoughts, the stronger they become. This is because parts like people fight back against being shamed or exiled. Any approach that increases your inner drill sergeant's impulse to shame you into behaving will do no better in internal families than it does in external ones in which parents adopt shaming tactics to control their children.
Is chow allowed in the barracks, Private Pile?
Sir, no, sir!
Are you allowed to eat jelly donuts, Private Pile?
Sir, no, sir!
We can see a similar theme in Inside Out. In the scene where Riley's sadness character tries to make a core memory, Joy intervenes and tries to stop her. Analogous to toxic positivity, there's a belief that it is acceptable to be joyous, but unacceptable to be sad. Carl Jung, the iconic Swiss psychologist, described a similar process of shadow integration. Jung described the shadow as containing the repressed or denied parts of the self. According to the Lovelit Center for Integrative Healing, shadow integration is a process of bringing the hidden parts of the self into consciousness. Schwartz seemed to match the same problem and solution using IFS. The mono-mind paradigm has caused us to fear our parts and view them as pathological. In our attempts to control what we consider to be disturbing thoughts and emotions, we just end up fighting, ignoring, disciplining, hiding, or feeling ashamed of those impulses that keep us from doing what we want to do in our lives.
I want to be an actor.
What the hell you say? You know what I tell all aspiring actors? Binti matcha with 2-pump classic syrup, please!
And then we shame ourselves for not being able to control them. In other words, we hate what gets in our way. In the advice of Jung and Schwartz, if we want our emotions to function properly, then we need to give voice to them whether or not we approve of their presence. Only when each emotion receives sufficient attention can we read their signals with a balanced perspective. Emotions are sensors. Whenever a device is sufficiently complex, then various sensors will be needed to ensure its effective operation. According to flight2fly.com, modern jets such as the Boeing 787 or Airbus A350 can integrate over 100 sensors in their flight control systems. The number of sensors on a commercial jet is proportional to the amount of internal complexity within the aircraft. There are about 2.3 million parts in a Boeing 787 airplane. According to ScienceCare.com, each adult human body is estimated to have more than 46 miles of nerves, 60,000 miles of blood vessels, and 100 billion nerve cells in the brain. Each emotion is like a sensor, giving us a signal about the world around us. Just like the internal family systems model, when a sensor goes wrong, it can increase the volume of signal to an extreme degree where it becomes disruptive. Boeing recently suffered 2 high-profile plane crashes, both of which were caused by malfunctioning sensors. An article by San Diego State University explains. In the 2 recent Boeing 737 MAX crashes, it appears that the sensor sent wrong information to the flight control system, indicating the angle of attack is too large and approaching stall. So the system steered the aircraft by pitching the nose down to correct the angle of attack. In the video Listening Brings Power, we mentioned talking someone through their emotions could mean the difference between life and death in a hostage situation. When a person is in a state of panic, they can experience what is known as an amygdala hijack. PsychCentral.com describes, an amygdala hijack occurs when any strong emotion, anger, fear, anxiety, or even extreme excitement, impairs the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain in the frontal lobe that regulates rational thought. A person experiencing an amygdala hijack is essentially experiencing a malfunctioning sensor like the Boeing 737 MAX crash. Catastrophic failure occurs when a person resorts to violence with terminal consequences. Yet like the airplane, it is not possible to operate a device that contains 46 miles of nerves without receiving input data from our sensors. Catherine Pale Kaufman from the Harvard Divinity School writes in The Purpose of Emotion, an overlooked self-regulatory sense. The biological job of the emotional sense is to regulate the self, to inform and control living creatures in response to circumstances that are potentially harmful or beneficial. It began as a humble biochemical feedback signaling and control loop, like the kind engineers now designed to control guided missiles and artificially intelligent robots. Emotions provide us with a rich world of information, yet if we become hijacked by them, they can become destructive. Let's take a look at an ancient school of thought that can help us maneuver this balancing act. Stoicism and emotional self-control. Stoicism is an ancient philosophy that was first created in the 3rd century BCE. Stoicism was popularized by Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in his book Meditations, written around 170 AD. Stoicism looks not at controlling the world, but at the ability to master the self. In the words of Epictetus, no man is free who is not master of himself. Stoicism acknowledges that events themselves are beyond human control, but this does not make us helpless. We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Although Stoicism advocates for emotional self-control, unlike Bruce Lee, it does not consider emotions to be the enemy. According to group-port therapy, while it may seem that Stoicism advocates for the absence of emotion, this is a common misconception. Stoics recognize the presence of emotions, but believe in not letting these emotions control actions or cloud judgment. Emotions are not just something we experience, but at a certain level of analysis, they are integral components of who we are. This is why emotional self-control is not just something to read about, but rather a practice that takes a lifetime to master. Conclusion. Emotions help us gather information about the world and our internal state. Emotions do not often present in a form that is explicit, and therefore one needs to apply methods and therapies for bringing them to light. If we try to forcefully barricade our emotions, then they are likely to spring back with increased potency. Emotional self-control is a challenge as old as ancient times, yet retains modern relevance. There's much more to say about emotions, but we will pick that up in another episode.